My history is I've been a solo practitioner for over 43 years. I practiced trial work, and as I reached the end of my career, I thought there were two pathways you could take from conversations with older lawyers. One was you just close it down and let the client scurry to other lawyers, possibly with recommendation. And the other one is you take a year to close it down yourself and try to handle all the cases. I did not really know you could sell a law firm when you're a solo practitioner. So I attended a seminar that Law Practice put on, and I was very impressed with them. They seemed very knowledgeable. They covered a lot of the areas that I was curious about, such as ethical considerations and how other lawyers had done it. And I felt like that would be a better way to proceed rather than just hearing word of mouth from other lawyers that may not have done it the right way. I think there are 5 steps to it the way I see it. First of all, you have to commit that you're going to look into it. A lot of people, it's very hard when you've been a lawyer, especially a solo practitioner for more than 40 years, to give it up and to critically value the practice worth and to critically put an evaluation on the worth of your practice. That's hard. And what do you do about cases that don't settle by the time you have your closing? So you really need a professional, first of all, once you commit. Secondly, you have to evaluate what is your practice really worth. And that's difficult, particularly when you've lived it, it's been your baby, you've created it from scratch, you're invested, you love your clients, you want them to do well. It's hard to get a true value of what it might be worth to another person. Then you have to market it. And I had no clue. I know how to market myself. I've done that pretty well through the years, but I didn't know how to market my practice, how to get it to someone that would potentially buy it and continue the type of practice that I had created. Then you have to negotiate a price. And again, it's priceless to any lawyer what your clients, what you've built over the years is worth. Finally, you had to have a closing. And you had to consider the ethical ramifications, the advertising, what's permissible, what's not. And the Law Practice Exchange and Tom and Camille, who works with Law Practice Exchange, really stepped up to the plate and had answers for me. They encouraged me. It took me it took almost a year to have the closing. And that was incredibly long. But there are complications. It's an expensive business. It costs a lot. But it's worth it because you really feel like you've done the right thing and gotten the right information. Law Practice Exchange was wonderful. I highly recommend them. They did a great job for me, and I felt like I got a fair price for my practice. Since I employed Law Practice Exchange, we have done the closing on both the practice, and I happen to own the building it was in, so we did the sale of the building in a later transaction. So I really had 2 parts to it. We structured it that I would stay and use my goodwill and my experience to train another lawyer, and that took about a year. And so we had the closing in the beginning of the year. I stayed the year. I was on salary. And again, that's something that is difficult whenever you've been on your own all this time to work for somebody else. I hadn't worked for somebody else since I was in college. So I didn't know how that felt, what that was. So it was an interesting experience. But Tom and Law Practice Exchange were very helpful in letting me understand what was going on, what was fair. And then after we sold the business, then we negotiated to sell the building, and we just completed that fairly recently. During that time, I was a landlord for the first time, so that was another interesting situation. And I'm continuing with the practice. I'm of counsel, basically a consultant. I'm not actively involved. I am going to keep my license. I will probably let my board certification in workers' compensation go, but I'm officially retired as of the end of 2023, loving life. very appreciative of Law Practice Exchange for giving me the chance to make money and wind it down in a way that I felt was dignified and very financially rewarding for me and my family. Some of the more difficult parts of letting go is that you've invested. I started practicing out of the back of my car. I couldn't even afford an office. I couldn't afford a typewriter. I literally practiced out of my back of my car for a year when I first moved to Asheville. Didn't know a soul in town. My practice is in Asheville, North Carolina, and I didn't know a soul in town when I moved here. So it was probably not the way I would recommend people do this, and it was very tough. For the first probably 10 years, I didn't even make minimum wage hardly. It was crushing. Thankfully, I had an understanding wife, and I felt that the best stock and investment I could make was in myself, because I did have confidence that if I had a chance, I could perform at a level that would make people maybe want to come to me. Toward the end of the practice, we had a practice that consistently earned more than $1 million a year, which for a solo practitioner was a fair amount. And it was all contingent fee, so I didn't have any hourly clients, so it was an interesting practice. Personal injury, workers' comp, and an occasional car accident type cases, and Social Security disability. But the hardest part the reason I retired was I'm 67 years old now. It was time, and I have grandkids, and I wanted to spend more time with my family. I chose to get into politics for 20 years, so I was heavily involved in local politics as county commission chair, and I just hadn't got to spend as much time with my family. And when my grandsons arrived on the scene, they live in Atlanta, I decided it was time to wind down. Law Practice Exchange, they really spent some time learning me as an individual and learning what I was looking for and what I wanted, and were very patient with me, because it's hard to let go. It's hard to tell clients that you've represented for It's hard to tell clients you've represented for 5 to 6 years and have lost everything they had that you're not going to finish the case for them. But they helped me work through these things. It was a very seamless transition. The lawyer who replaced me is an excellent lawyer that I probably would have hired if I'd hired a successor. That rarely works out, I've learned, if you do it at the last minute. Law Practice Exchange really helped me think long run and plan, because if you decide to retire and then start shutting down, it's too late. You've really got to start years ahead of time thinking about it and planning it out. Whichever option you decide to do, you can certainly have a buyout, you can certainly sell it to somebody else, but I wouldn't recommend it, because I don't think most lawyers have the business savvy to do it the right way and understand everything that's connected with it.